Welcome back. So, previous video, what we did is kind of get around the basis of how to get your model, how to render the model, and how to make it look like a semi-good with tune shader with a little playing around with the viewport rendering instead of actually rendering with the PBR settings from what Blender is supposed to do. So let's move on from there and let's talk about MMD tools and how to move your model around, what you inspect and not. So, brand new Blender file. Let's open up MPanel. Let's go to MMD tools and let's talk about over this little thing. So create model. If you have, for instance, you want to export your model from Blender into to the MMD program in a PMX file, so you need to create a model here. And if you press this little button, you can give it a name and its scale value. You really want to keep this as a base if you're using the standard Blender units. If you didn't move any of the units, you're good with this. Here, what this did, let me hide this. It created an empty and a bone, which is going to be the root bone or mother bone in PMX. Here you can just attach things into this bone and they will get exported into your model. And here are the so the armature, and then everything will live within here. So let's grab the cube and let's say this, and I believe we can select that one and then select that one. And we can press attach mesh, right? And this will parent the current mesh, which is the cube, into the bone. And this guy will come from here and live down here as a child. And now if I move the empty, the mesh will go with it. And now you can export this model, and then you have a cube as your first model. So, you know what? Let's do that. Let's do that right now. Here, let's go and first MD model. All right, let's call this the cube. All right. So in MMD, the scale is quite different, and the scale value, it is a scale here as, let's say, 1 in Blender. In MMD, they need to get upscale 12 point times the size. If you don't, then your model, if you, for instance, you have this as 1, your model is going to be tiny and little and like little figure. So do not change this at all. And here we just export the model. And the export, let's open up MD. Let me find that file that I just exported. Okay, where are you at? First model. Here, let's grab it here and export model. And we have a very first model. And then move it. And there's only one bone. But we have full control over it. So very basic. That's how you can export some basic models into a PMX program. Create a model, click on the mesh, shift select on your bones, and then attach model. Now, as you can probably saw, this model also doesn't have any texture, so that's why it came back. But one item you want to add is over here under your textures panel, tab here in the materials. Down here, you're gonna way down here, and then you're gonna set this up. So you're gonna give your texture. So here in Blender, you add however many textures your model needs. Down here, you will go and reference those same textures and give them their English and Japanese names accordingly. Their diffuse, spectral, and ambient colors, reflection, and if whether or not they're going to be alpha or not. So that's going to be for if they're going to be like for instance a solid color or transparency. You change the settings. If however it has a texture file, you need to come down here and actually browse wherever you have that texture file. If it requires a sphere texture, you will need to do the same thing. Add texture, and then if it has a tune texture for it, you actually need to browse that and look for it. And now once they're linked, you can export it, and they'll get exported with the model, and they'll work appropriately. If you don't do this, then your model is going to be blank. It's solid white because you never added any textures that MMD can understand. And we'll go through that in a separate video and how to export your like full model and how to set this up. Right now, just the basics of getting it done. So here, I'm going to delete this hierarchy, and let's start with actual MMD model that you can animate. So here on the scene setup, we can go and import a model. So find the model that you want to import, and then click import. And here you have the scale value. Also, this already contains a preset. Do not change the scale, but if for some instance if it got changed, then 0.08 is what you're looking for. If you have a model at 1, then you're gonna have a huge ass model here in Blender, and then usually the physics and so forth are not gonna quite work well. So you're gonna be playing with some kind of odd scale values. So make sure you keep it at like the size of what Blender can understand, which is gonna be 0.08 for a MD model that you're gonna import to Blender. I'm not gonna import a model from here because I'm gonna be using the Unias assets to import the same model as what I used in the previous video, and it's gonna be from Genshin. And since I already had her downloaded, I have her already in cache. Press that one, and right here I still can't figure out how to activate the thumbnails. Well, hopefully it works on yours. Press import. So she's there, selected, and it is going to be imported at 0.08 scale. Press import. Wait a little while. Model's imported. And I don't need this. Let's go back to the MMD tab. And just for the heck of it, let's go and get the solid view. Let's grab the shade list so we can get the tune look of our model. First thing, you want to always select this little guy, the empty, which is right here in the middle. Once you do the import or export of your model, select this guy. Don't select the mesh. Don't just select the bones. It has some cases, but not the entire model goes with it. Once you do an export, it is irritating once you do that. So in order to save you a bunch of trouble, always select the empty. This little crosshair here in the bottom. Yes, saves you a bunch of headaches. To import the animation, select the empty. Press import, or go over here, import, and select import motion, and same goes with import model here. But select that one, and then you can import. This will bring the animation towards the bones, and also add the required shape keys towards the model. If you do not do that, if you select the mesh and only import, you will only have the shape keys for that animation on the model, and the bones will not move. Same goes if you have selected only the bones and press import. Only the animation for the body will get imported, but the shape keys, the expressions, will not work. So in order for them to work, you need to select the other one and import, so you can double effort. You want to do it only once, select the empty. This will import both the shape keys and the bones animations. One click or multiple clicks, it's all up to you. I will prefer just to have one click. As a little example, let's press that one. Let's go to emotions here. Let's grab that one here. Now, one thing I need to emphasize here on the imports. The margin 5 is usually too short. It will work for some animations when the model is pretty darn close to its original pose, when she didn't really move. But for any other animation, when the model starts somewhere else than her original pose, like she turns 180 degrees, she turns to the side, or when she moves abruptly at the very beginning, you're gonna have problems with your physics. So in order to solve that, you need to increase this margin accordingly. I'll usually stay at 30 and 60 most of the time. This gives a little buffer for the animation to go from its A pose to its initial starting pose, and have the physics go, flow, and then settle down before they start moving around. If it's too short, the physics will start and then whiplash. Right, so your first frames will or your video are gonna look like all wacky, because the physics, depending also on your physics, how much you have in them, how odd they're going to look. So all up to you look. I'll say always import at 60, save you a bunch of headaches, and just render from 60 on out. All right, so you're never gonna notice. Ideally, you always want to click this one, treat current pose as rest pose, and then import. That way, this pose, you'll have a bit less problems with your animations once they move. Okay, so as you can see, I had this thing turn green. Means you have some kind of animation built in. If I press a spacebar, which is play, you can see the the machine going. I am not gonna build the physics just yet until the very end, just so that I can explain the other things, since baking the physics will require some time, and then it's a lot of fixing. Beforehand, let me talk about how to move the model. So the empty works in the way that you can move your model from its locations. Okay, so you can move your model from your world. Here, right? So you can post it wherever you want. Move the control model. Though this is actually good for animations. For that, you want to go to your pose and move the bones around so you can animate the model. So let's talk a little bit about that in this little section. The shortcut will be Control Tab. You have this, and then once you have this solid view of the bones, you're in pose mode. In object mode, up here, right, you can click on it. As long as you have selected the bones, you have pose mode. So you can either go click on the bones, I'll Control Tab, or click on the bones and go up here and go to pose mode. Whichever way you prefer, you can do it. I just usually go for the shortcuts since Blender is heavily shortcut emphasized. Alright, so little quick things about how to move the model around. Click on the bone, then you have the little selection highlighted, and then the movements from Blender are pretty much universal. G is to move. Like for instance, this bone is parented to this bone, so G only works as close to like R as rotate, because I cannot pull this thing away, which I think I can for some of. Okay, never mind. I thought some bones were loose in there. I like this one. Okay, so the teeth bone, apparently it's not connected to anything else, so it's floating there. So G, if it's not connected, you can actually move it around in space. Okay. G, if it's connected, you can only rotate it in place. Okay, so now let's press R. This is actually a rotation. And for here, in our purposes, it's working the same way for a G as its length. But R, it is the one way to do so. Now the third one will be S, which is going to be scale. Press S, and now you can make something super big or something super small. And so that works just about for everything. So you can easily make a chibi character if you really want, with no real effort. Okay, so here, select the model. Now, if you double click on a, for instance, G or R or S, you have one different, well, here, look, press double G, yeah, come on. Okay, for R, it's working. In G, I think it's not working because it's Okay, I can't quite remember if G doesn't do anything or just for R. But you have this little widget now that you can move it. It will take some time to get used to, but if you like, you can easily animate using this little method without you having to move your camera around to get a appropriate angle so you can move it. For instance, I want to move it forward, I will need to move it like that, then like that, right? But with double R, I can do this, and then I got it pretty much in the same spot. You can also press whatever G, R, or S, and then press the appropriate axis, and you'll lock it into that particular axis. For instance, let's press R and then X. Now you have it locked in the X view. No matter where I move it, it's always gonna be rotating in that axis. Press R and Y, and then it's locked in that axis. R and Z, and so forth. So this is an easy way you can move your model without having to move your camera around if you have one of those axes selected. If you, however, want to move it in the axis of the bone, right now we are global, so means our X and Y is going from here, so using this axis here. We see here the green one, the red one, and then the blue one is going to be the X-axis. We can go top to bottom. If you want to go, you can change it to any of these settings. The ideal one is going to be local view. So local, it's going to be the local axis of the object you have selected. For instance, this one, the y-axis is not going back and forth from the model, but it's going from this little bone to the tip of this little bone. For instance, let's go R and Y. It rotates it in that axis. So let me get a different view, R and Y. So you can see the line. It's not following the global view, but it's now following the axis of that particular bone. So do change this occasionally from one into the other one, or from global to local, because it makes it a whole lot easier to animate. So here, so local view, X and Y, you have that one. I mean, rotate on X, and R and Z, rotate that way on Z axis. So as long as you have clear understanding how they go are. And in order to see the axis, I believe it's over here on view display and right here. Show axis, and then you have the reference of where are those axes pointed. I usually never have this on because, as you can see, it just makes it even worse, more clutter on your display. But once you understand that Y is goes from this little tip and the other one, and then X and Z are either one of these two settings, right? Then you can pretty much easily just toggle those on and move it accordingly. Okay, so basically here you can just grab the model, pose it, and however you want. Now let's talk about how to register the keyframes. If you move the model and you want it to actually animate like so, right? you want to add a keyframe to a particular area. So from here, let me do it to this particular bone because it does not have any keyframes whatsoever. So it's going to be ideal and not change it to anything that has a current keyframe. So let's say from here, and then from here I want it to move. Let me go to global view, global axis. Let's move it up here so it's pretty freaking obvious. Since it doesn't have any keyframes, I need to give it a keyframe at the beginning. So once I add a keyframe over here, she'll move from here up to here in space. So if I move it from here and just press I to insert a keyframe, you can select whatever axis you want, rotation, scale, or every single one. If you know what you're doing and only want a specific type of keyframe register and not the others, you can select them all. If you don't, then you pretty much want every single one. So it's going to be this one: location, rotation, and scale. Yes, keyframes, all of them. But since I have no keyframes here at the beginning, the model is going to stay up there, floating up there in space. And I don't want that. I wanted her to be from here, and then once she goes over here, I wanted her to go up there, right? Like a jump. Here, let's say I want her to go back to her original spot. In Blender, in pose mode, you can press Alt R will reset its rotation, G will reset its location, and S will reset its scale. So let's say, you know what, here, let's go from here. Here, let's say, let's make the model smaller, and let's flip her like so. Now let's press register rotation scale from here to there. There's a major difference, right? So let me once again go and reset her and put her back into original locations. You're not gonna be doing this and trying to figure out how to put it. So in order to do that, is you press Alt R, resets her location. Rotation. G resets her location, and S resets her scale. RGS. So from RGS, and then she's back. And the reason why she didn't come on, came back, it was because this one was Racer, so delete that one, and let's say RGS. And then you will add a rotation, location, and scale if, for instance, you have them all changed somewhere else. So you do that into every single one, but moving a bone and then pressing I and doing this for every single one, it's rather irritating. And I will only do it if I have a if I really want to clean things up at that point. But if you want to get a general layout of what you want to make it automatically. So that's where this little button comes in. Auto keying. You toggle this one on. You move it here, and let's say I want to move the arm up here in the air. You click on it, and now, as you can see, I have a go back. Okay, it's way too sensitive. Okay, so I've got a new keyframe. So it goes from here, 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 right? So let's say from here, I want to go in the back. And then reset, and let's go down. Right, so you can easily do a bunch of blackouts having this guy on. You can move pretty much any single bone, and they'll register that one bone wherever you move that in space. So pretty nifty. So that is basics how you go about moving your model, how to register the keyframes, and how to edit the animation. Once I know these little things and I have an animation imported, okay, so let me grab this and just delete those keyframes because obviously they're annoying. Select them all. While you have this selected, press X and delete keyframes, and I wanna reset it and reset them all. Okay, so once you have your model, you know how to move it, you know how to reset the keyframes, how to register keyframes. I will now go through the animation, right, and try to find any clear glitches, since sometimes the animations don't get imported into Blender quite right, and then your model might break somewhere on the line. If you find a place like that within the animation, then you will go to that certain section and then find the appropriate bone, fix it, and then register the new keyframe, and then move on. Try to find another error, find the corresponding error bone, move it to its new location, register it, and so on and so on. All right. So from there, okay, let's say what else can we place in here. So you know how to import a model, how to possibly fix your animation errors, and how to do a basic image render. As before, so the very end, let's bake the animation and get some fixes going, because right now the model has none. Right, so everything's floating in space. So one good thing about it is that I can actually move the model around in post mode, and the whole entire skirt and everything goes with it. After I bake it, I'm not gonna be able to do that anymore. You'll see that the dress will stay in place, but the body of the model I will be able to move. In order to fix that, you will need to delete the bake, fix your animation again, and then rebake it again. irritating, but that's what the steps to working on Blender. So let's go to post, select your empty. Every time you're going to be working with your model, make sure you have that selected. First thing we want to do is come down here and we're going to assemble all. This does a bunch of translations from MMD into what Blender can understand. So make sure you assemble them all. Press this one button. It like sets everything up. You're gonna go back up here where it says the timeline, creating frames, so forth. You have this little exclamation mark, and then you wanna click on update world. Exclamation one goes away. You gotta verify that your animation is actually, let's go to postmodern bones. Select a bone that has some kind of animation. You see the keyframes. Zoom out all the way, and then we can go over here to the very end. So that looks about right. 110, 110. There's no more. So you verify that your start and end have the appropriate frames. Then you can bake. So here, let's bake. You see down here a progress point. So it's point cache. This is all dependent on your CPU. The faster the CPU, the faster this thing will go. Your GPU is not doing anything at this point, so it's all CPU based. Baking requires CPU, and at this point Blender is pretty much frozen. You cannot do squat with it until this little section is done. One thing I did forget to do, which is really important. Blender tends to crash a lot. I would always, before you bake, save your model. Because if some cases you've done a lot of progress and at this point you press bake and then Blender just ups and dies on you, you're gonna be pissed off. It has happened to me quite a lot of times in several different projects, and it's pretty constant that it crashes once you're baking. Okay, so for instance, Blender didn't crash. We're all good. We can place play now, and now we have some kind of physics. Let me get rid of the viewport, and now we have this little thing. Here you will try and look at any bad clipping, and if you do find some bad clippings, you will go grab the model, edit the model, right, and then hopefully next time you delete the bake, they'll rebake it and those little irritating clipping issues will go away. Now, as an example, if I move the model, the physics will not go with it. For some reason, the hairs are going with it. It usually would not. But since you bake the physics, they stay in place. Yeah, we're curious why the hairs do actually move the model. Interesting. Okay, so that's another thing. So if you find some areas where you need to fix, you go fix those little areas. Usually it's going to be the arms. Delete the bake and rebake it again, and then once again check those locations to see if the clipping stopped or the physics got resolved. If for some cases everything works fine, then you will save your file at this point. Start adding the background, start adding the settings, right? And then you end up rendering your model. Let me save this, save as, and okay, so at this point, this model has an animation, has a bunch of little settings, and now it's ready to get rendered. I'm going to leave this video here since it's already pretty freaking long, and then we'll start with the next one going from this point on. So catch you guys in the next video. See you next time.